see. Sound check, sound check. Let me know if sound is good. Alright, Baruch Vimesh, School Mitzvot. Sounds good, thank you very much, Baruch. Okay. Facebook and Apple, good, very good. All right. B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, shiur Torah, bruchim habayim. We're back here, starting a new week, BeEzrat Hashem, continuing our series of the Jewish Hashkafa. And Baruch Hashem, we have a lot to talk about because right now we have one of the biggest tests that Am Yisrael has gotten in many years with the war that's at hand, and of course everyone's emunah is being put up to the test. So tonight's shiur is going to address some of the fundamentals of emunah, and really to try to figure out whether you're simply failing your emunah test or you're lacking, and that's the reason, or you're failing your emunah test because of something else. Perhaps we're not failing. If you're not failing, then certainly these are tools that are going to help you to continue succeeding. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the refuah shlema and hatzlacha rabba for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Nisriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Zora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to support our organization and help us do all the amazing things that the organization is doing. Anyone that wants to donate and help us could either donate on one of the vehicles that they're watching this live shiur through, whether it's the BH Live website or the Facebook or YouTube, or you could simply go to our website, BeEzratHashem.org, and donate over there. Or if you want to donate to one of our campaigns to do a Tikkun BEIT, you can go to tikkunablit.live or tikkunablit.org, and you can do your tikkun at this auspicious time of Shuravim that we have upon us. Just as a side note, this is a very timely issue, so because obviously it's a limited supply. Our great and extraordinary and amazing and beautiful and holy Kollel in Eretz Yisrael started publishing a newsletter recently, and we decided that we're going to bring this to the United States as well, the hard copy. So we already published last month's, and now we have this month's just got published in Eretz Yisrael and is being distributed, and we just printed a bunch of beautiful copies here in the United States. It's limited supply. I only have about 1,000 left or so, maybe less. So anyone that wants to distribute this in their community, get 50, 100 of them or so, you can go and to our kiruvstore.org and order yourself some. Or you could just simply text me with your address and email, and I could send you the copies overnight. Tomorrow, BeEzrat Hashem, you'll have it before this holiday. This is going to be a new publication for the organization starting now. BeEzrat Hashem, we're going to be printing them out every month, new editions. This month we have our Rav Yaakov Zamir, the chief Dayan in Eretz Yisrael, writing an extraordinary write-up. We have Rav Sharvit here talking about Shovavim and a few other things that have to do with morality. We have Rav Ben Naim, Rav Tzvi Didi, one of the Dayanim in the organization. Baruch Hashem, it's a little book. It's about 20 pages. Really, really nice edition. Baruch Hashem, a lot of work went into it. It's only in Hebrew, so this is perfectly fit for synagogues, kollel, yeshiva, where you know that the people there are Hebrew speakers. I wouldn't recommend giving it out to people in the streets that you don't know if they're speaking Hebrew, because it won't be to any use. So with that being said, as I also promised last week, the new book, that's our first book in English, that's really meant for both him and her. It's for couples or people that are in the in the marriage shidduchim world. This is a fantastic book that we have just came out, and that's available in English and Hebrew. It's on our website. It's available for free. If you get a box of 20 to distribute in your community, you could also go to the Kiruv store and get yourself a box. If you want more, you could obviously order more. Just make sure to take pictures of the people that are actually getting it, and so we know that it's not just sitting in your closet collecting dust. No one's doing tshuva if it's staying in warehouses. All of these things are expensive. All of these things are time-consuming. So anyone that wants to help us with this, whether it's by distributing them or by donating money, certainly your help is appreciated. So with that being said, we're going to get on into the shiur and really try to address one of the most fundamental questions that that really affects us in every generation. Needless to say, right now, at a time where really the emunah is being tested. Everyone's emunah is being tested. Whether it was what happened during the coronavirus crisis, the vaccine crisis, that was just a part of the test, but a lot more is being tested now with the war at hand and the world showing how much they truly hate Jews, and really in practically every single country and every community, everyone is really being questioned right now, whether you believe in HaShem or not, because sometimes a person could lose a promotion as a result of it. Sometimes they could lose their job altogether. Sometimes a person is going to just simply not want to deal with certain people that are in their lives because they thought that they were friends until they found out this person is anti-Semitic or just simply is a hater of God. And this is not exactly the time to be friends with people that are haters of God. And if that's not enough, of course, there are countless people that are dealing with parnasah issues, and the parnasah issues today are twofold. Some people are dealing with the ordinary parnasah issue of simply not having enough money to make ends meet. Yeshivas are going, the prices for yeshiva is sky high. The prices for any kosher product is sky high, and people are having a hard time, meeting their obligations, and starting to consider whether to take their kids out of school. But where do you put them? You can't put them in public school because that's the equivalent of avodah zarah, as Arav Kuli says in his Me'am Loez 300 years ago. But at the same token, what do you do if you can't afford it? What if you do if what you can afford is a horrible school? Like one person told us last week, where she sent her daughter to a school. She was brought up in a frum house, very, very religious, rabbanim in the family, and she sent her daughter to a school to get higher education, and all she got is the 10-year-old girl is coming home with foul language and disgusting behavior, only to find out that this is what she's learning from her friends in school, with the actual teacher knowing all about it. So this certainly is going to make a person question things, question the system, question emunah, question the fact that even if she wanted to put him in another school, she won't be accepted. Why? Because you need to know somebody, you need to have a certain amount of money. So again, all of these things have to do with emunah. But then there's another level of emunah test, which is the emunah of having too much money. And yes, believe it or not, there are quite a few people today that have simply too much money. Too much money to the point where they are addicted to it, they are infatuated with it, and they are quickly forgetting about God. I even heard from somebody that literally, I wanted to cry, even though I knew half the truth of half the story before I heard it from this young man. And to hear it from the person was really mind-boggling to me, where you have parents, which I know all too well, have millions and millions of dollars. They've never donated a single penny to our organization, but I know from simply other people that know them, other people that deal with them in business and so on. And if you walk into their office, you're quickly going to see about $20 million worth of merchandise that they own 100% of. Meaning they're not poor. Let's just say that at the very least, they're not even close to poor. But yet, this wonderful family of Jewish people that has a kippah on and eats kosher food, has a parents that work so hard to maintain this $20 million, that the father does not even go to synagogue because he's afraid to leave the business for 20 minutes. This, Rabotai, is a very, very serious emunah problem of having too much money. And there are, of course, many others that have similar issues in their own fields and their own places. And I remember this when I was on Wall Street, where I would deal with millionaires and in some cases billionaires on a daily basis. And the biggest problem that they had, aside from their family crisis that was pretty much standard among all of them, was protecting the money they had, protecting the wealth. Sometimes is more of a heartache than actually gaining this wealth or attaining it. So of course, emunah is one of the fundamentals of all fundamentals in having a connection to Hashem. So the Chazon Ish has already had a very in-depth section of this series dedicated to emunah, which was the first 20 lectures of this series. Anyone that hasn't watched it or simply hasn't glued this to their mind should immediately go back to those 20 lectures and study them like you're studying the most important teachings in your life, because this is what everyone needs. But of course, tonight's teaching is also going to be extremely relevant. In addition to what we've already taught in that first 20 lectures in the series that we have, Bitachon BeHashem by the Bet Levi, all of these teachings about emunah are never old. They're never something that becomes obsolete. The question really we're going to try to address tonight is, why do we fail in our emunah test when we say comfortably and confidently that we do believe in God? Person says, listen, I believe in God, I keep Shabbat, I keep Tarat Mishpacha, I eat kosher, I donate from time to time, I do whatever I need to do, but listen, something happened today and I can't believe it. I practically forgot God. I got all nervous, I started crying, I didn't know what to do, how I'm going to pay the bills, who am I going to marry, all of these questions that are on the top of the mind of people. People that believe that they know how to run the world better than Hashem, for at least for those moments. For those moments, they thought that they know how to run the world better than Hashem because they're crying about how things are turning out because apparently they had a better plan. And Hashem did not agree. So these types of fundamental moments are literally going to define us through thick and thin. As we have Am Yisrael conveniently and certainly not coincidentally leave Egypt in this week's Parashat Beshalach after a series of miracles, one bigger than the other, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hand destroying the enemy in a way unlike any other before or after, only to fail one emunah test after another. How could they fail? They saw the water turn to blood. They saw one frog multiply into millions of frogs. Every time the Egyptians hit it, more frogs would come out. It was this supernatural event in front of your eyes, never to be repeated. They saw hail come down from Shemayim, blocks of hail. We're not talking about tiny little hails that sometimes you see on the news that scare the living lights out of people and break their windshields. We're talking about hail that had lava inside it, that only hit the Egyptians, that weren't afraid of God and therefore they stayed outside. Literally, hail with a smart bomb inside it. Perhaps we should use that on Gaza. They saw all types of extraordinary things. And if that's not enough, they saw the firstborn die a horrific death in front of their eyes. But not in the way that you would think, where it was just simply each Egyptian family had one person die. But rather each Egyptian family had a series of people die, because it also proved that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the hidden. Where the woman that cheated on her husband, the Egyptian woman that cheated on her husband with multiple men and children came out of it, the husband didn't know, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew. And therefore those firstborn children of the different father also died. So you see here a series of miracles, one after another. And yet, after we leave the Egypt with extraordinary wealth, as the Egyptians were literally begging us to leave. Our former masters begged us to leave, gave us gold and silver, and even dresses that we didn't ask for. You're never going to see a Jew wearing Egyptian clothes. What do we need the dresses for? But you see, the original command was gold, silver, no dresses. But the second verse mentions the dresses too. Literally, they were begging us to leave. Just go. Such miracles. How can you possibly fail an emunah test? The moment you get the Yam Suf, you start crying. You tell Moshe Rabbeinu what? There wasn't graves in Egypt, so you brought us here to bury us? Sarcastic humor of a Jew apparently is timeless. And if that's not enough, we get to the water and it's bitter, so we start crying again? What, did you think that Hashem brought you all the way here just to have you starve to death? No water to drink, no food to eat. We ran out of matzah, as the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim says, that the first Pesach was in Egypt, but it was only for one day. The matzah that we brought with us wasn't for a whole week of Pesach. It was simply just whatever we can get just to survive, however we can survive, but it only lasted us one day. So, certainly we knew that Hashem had something prepared for us, but apparently we knew, but once push came to shove, we didn't believe. How could this be that with all of these miracles, we failed the test? How could it be that after all the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for each and every single one of us, whether it's bringing us to life, medical miracles, money that came out of nowhere, all types of friendships, relationships, different contacts, and for those of you that are close Talmidim of mine, you've heard me give you the personal advice of writing those miracles that you tell me about in a little book to remind you on that dark day that one day will come when your emunah will be questioned, and therefore you open that little book to remind yourself that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with you in the past, and therefore there's nothing for you to worry about today. Now, how can we fail the test of emunah? How can it be that we fail time and time again? The Chazon Ish gives us a little bit of food for thought, which we will BeEzrat HaShem build on, to see what is really the root cause of failing in emunah. Why do we spend so much time watching the news as if it's going to change anything? Why do we spend so much time talking about the problems that we have instead of simply praying to Hashem and using our time wisely? Why do we have so much worry and concern about things that are beyond our ability to fix, and we know that we need the hand of Hashem? Why? This, Rabotai Karim, is certainly a very big fundamental question. And instead of going into all of the bigger and the deeper parts of this series, we're going to address this particular one by simply looking at some of the holy words of the Chazon Ish and trying to address them. The Chazon Ish has gone into the extraordinary wealth of wisdom that our holy sages had. Medical wisdom, scientific wisdom. Anyone that watched those lectures knows that it's simply wisdom that's second to none, because it's divine wisdom that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave each and every single one of them, and thereby each and every single one of us, if we so dare, to go into the Torah and learn it. But after that, the Chazon Ish delves into a Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 56a, a famous story that happened to us many years ago at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, at the time of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, where the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 56a, says that there was once a book called Sefer HaRefuot, the Book of Cures. And this book was hidden away by Chizkiyahu the king, Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Why? Why would you take this book and hide it? Rashi comments on there and says, because the people would not be humbled by their illness, because they were cured immediately. And the Rambam in his commentary on the Mishnah says that this book was given to us by Shlomo HaMelech, who wrote this book with his wisdom that was given to him by HaShem, a special set of wisdom which we will delve into a little bit tonight, BeEzrat HaShem, with the help of our Morenu v'Rabbeinu Rav Ephraim in his series about Shlomo. And the Rambam says that this book was given to us by Shlomo HaMelech, who wrote this Sefer Refuot, so that anyone who became ill would refer to this book, do what was written in it, and be cured. And when Chizkiyahu saw the people were not trusting in HaShem anymore, he took the book away and he hid it. Up to here we have the holy words of the Chazon Ish. Now, Rabotai Yekarim, who in the world today does not want this special book? This special book that had the cure for every single ailment. Whether somebody had AIDS or somebody had cancer. Whether they had a stuffy nose or simply a migraine. Whatever they had, you open the book, you see the cure, you do it, and it's guaranteed to work and cure every ailment. Sounds fantastic. Sounds like a gift from God. It was. But this gift was taken away. And in fact, this gift was taken away through wisdom and not through animosity or malice. While one will think that, hey, why would he do such a thing? If we had this book, we could overcome every ailment and serve God even better. Perhaps that's our evil inclination telling us that. We know more than Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu, who lived in a generation of extraordinary wisdom, to such an extent that when the sages checked everyone in his community and beyond, from city to city, they could not find an ignorant person. They couldn't find even a child that did not know the most complicated laws of purity in the Torah. Why? Because Chizkiyahu, when he became king, he put the sword down in front of everyone. And he says, whoever does not learn Torah will get the sword instead. Meaning death penalty. Don't worry about being a soldier. Don't worry about building smart bombs, fighting terrorism. Don't worry about making millions. All you need to worry about is learn Torah. And the people listened to him. He built a generation of holy people. So why take away this gift that was given to us by HaShem through Shlomo HaMelech that cures all ailment? Certainly someone that can make the entire nation learn Torah had wisdom superior to ours. And his wisdom told him that this book is bad for the people at this time. Perhaps it was okay when his great-grandfather Shlomo was alive, but it has now turned into something bad. Whereas the Torah says in Sefer Dvarim, after you eat and you're satiated, do not forget me. Meaning HaShem tells us, after I give you all of the blessings and the salvations that you ask for, don't forget me. Letting us know of the inner inclination to forget where the salvation came from. Chizkiyahu saw this with his own eyes, where even though many people learned Torah, apparently it wasn't applied the proper way, to the extent where some people already thought that it was the time of Mashiach, where all you need to do to live is just simply look at this book. You didn't need to be so righteous. You didn't need to know the entire Torah. You didn't need to have divine revelation, no less than Moshe Rabbeinu. All you need to do is just open up the book. There's an ailment in the family. The wife has a problem. The kids have a problem. Go to page 50. Go to page 55. Go to page 355. And you got yourself a cure for everyone. This, Rabotai, turned into a spiritual cancer for the people. Because now, instead of getting the message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending us through these ailments, we ignored the message because we already had a cure. Instead of understanding that you're sick because Hashem is rebuking you, you're sick because Hashem is punishing you, you're sick because Hashem is trying to get your attention, He's trying to elevate you, He's trying to make you better, He's trying to direct you or redirect you. Instead of getting you to pray to Him, you ignored Him. And thereby Chizkiyahu concluded that this book must be taken away from the people, hidden until the time of Mashiach. Now, of course, the righteousness of Chizkiyahu does not need to be questioned, as the Torah itself testifies that if Hashem would have brought Mashiach during that generation, Chizkiyahu would have been it. And in fact, Hashem nearly made Chizkiyahu the king Mashiach. And the only flaw that he could find in Chizkiyahu was that one time, instead of singing and celebrating for Hashem, all he did was just thank Him. All he did was simply be grateful. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for someone in his stature. So now, Rabotai Karim, we have to ask ourselves, how is it that we fail in this? Forgetting Hashem. With emunah, with lack of bitachon. We look at the Torah. In this week's parasha, we see that at the beginning of the parasha, Parashat Beshalach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets us out of Egypt. But to make sure that no one feels alone, the Pasuk says, V'Adonai olech lifneim yomam be'amud anan, lanchotam haderech v'layla be'amud esh, la'ir lahem lalechet yomam v'layla. The verse says, Hashem went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them on the way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel day and night. In essence, Hashem is showing them He's with them, as Rashi says, where it wasn't just one pillar or the other, it was one completing the other. They're in essence connected, where they knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with them at all times. There wasn't a moment where Hashem did not make His presence known. So you would think, if Hashem is in front of you, now is the time you have emunah by default. It's like simply turning on something, turning on your phone, turning on the computer, turning on the car, and it turns on, that's what it's supposed to do. In essence, Hashem is in front of you, the emunah, that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be you have emunah in Hashem. But no, it wasn't that. We see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Moshe Rabbeinu a warning. And he tells him, speak to the children of Israel and let them turn back and encamp before the Piachirot, between Migdol and the sea, before the Baal Tzefon. What's the Baal Tzefon? He's telling Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Am Yisrael to go to a specific place where the Baal Tzefon is. The Baal Tzefon was the only idol, statue still standing. As the Midrash tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed all of the statues as part of the plagues, except this one, as he left it standing in order to fool Paro into thinking that this idol is somehow stronger than God. Now, of course, this was foolishness and wishful thinking, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows His creation. And he left this Baal Tzefon, which was in essence the idol of the ocean, idol of the water. He says, go over there, because as soon as people tell Paro that this statue is still up, he'll immediately think and conclude that perhaps I can't overpower this one. Go there. Paro will say of the children of Israel, they are imprisoned in the land, and the wilderness has locked them in. I shall strengthen the heart of Paro, and he will pursue them. And I will be glorified through Paro and his entire army. And Egypt will know that I am HaShem, and so they did. See here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Moshe Rabbeinu the clear message that this is not finished yet. Until Paro and Egypt are completely destroyed, my name is not going to be sanctified and glorified to its fullest potential. And as the Gemara in Masechet Chagigah says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in order to have his name sanctified. And thereby, if you lived an entire day, 24 hours, and did not sanctify Hashem's name in some way, there was no purpose for you to be created. Every day, you must sanctify Hashem's name in one way or another. Whether it's glorify his name through good deeds that you're doing, such as helping other Jews get closer to Hashem, or through his mitzvot, or countless other ways that you can easily sanctify Hashem's name. But if one lived an entire day and did not sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name, literally, their existence is being questioned as far as whether it was worth it to create that person or not. And the Gemara concludes it was not worth it to create this person. So Hashem says, this needs to happen. In so many words, Moshe knows that the Egyptians are coming. And they're not just coming with a few soldiers and some spears, maybe some whips like old times. No. Everyone is coming. And in order to do that, as Onkelos elaborates for us, he tells us that Paro had to convince everyone to come. How did he convince them? All of the treasures of Paro's house, which was the only thing that was still left in Egypt, he brought them with him. And he said, whoever comes with me will get to split the spoils of the house of Paro. And that's why everyone came. And they brought all of the treasures with them. All of this would be given to Am Yisrael as the ocean spit it all out when after it drowned the Egyptians. It was another one of the three ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu enriched Am Yisrael. One of them being the Egyptians gave them wealth from their households. Another way was they found the cave of Yosef HaTzadik, that he had much of a third of the treasure, that he split the treasure of Egypt into. And the third way was this. So now we're at Yam Suf. But the angel of the ocean does not want to split. Why? He views Am Yisrael as idol worshippers. Not only because they literally worshipped idols, but some of them even brought the idol with them. Like Micha, the little boy that Moshe Rabbeinu saved, brought the idol with him. So the sea didn't want to split. As it says to Hashem, these are idol worshippers and the Egyptians are idol worshippers. Why should I change my nature for them? Everyone starts to cry, except Moshe. Moshe is not crying. Why? He knows this is all part of the plan. This is all part of the plan. But they cried to him until Moshe cries to Hashem. He first tells them, ויאמר משה אל העם אל תיראו, התייצבו, ראו את ישועת אדוני, אשר יעשה לכם היום, כי אשר ראיתם את מצרים היום, לא תוסיפו לראותם עוד עד עולם. אדוני ילחם לכם ואתם תחרישון. Moshe says to the people, chapter 14, verse 13, for those that are following, do not fear, stand fast and see the salvation of HaShem, that He will perform for you today. For as you have seen Egypt today, you shall not see them ever again. HaShem shall make war for you, and you shall remain silent. Here Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to give Am Yisrael chizuk. He's trying to give Am Yisrael chizuk. He says, you have nothing to worry about. Just have emunah that Hashem is going to help you. That's it. But they don't. They're all crying. They're all hysterical. They all forgot about the countless miracles they witnessed in Egypt, the countless miracles they're seeing right now with the pillars of fire and the cloud. And forgot. At the moment of truth, they forgot. Like we forget. The times of the moment of the truth. We look for a job, we get rejected. We look for a shidduch. She's not interested. He's not interested. We look to bring babies to the world and build a family. But another month and another year passes, and the blessing didn't come. And then we cry, why is Hashem doing this to me? Why am I sick? Why am I poor? Why? Wait, did you forget all of the miracles you had just this morning? Did you forget all of the miracles you had last year? Did you forget all of the miracles you had your whole life? Yeah, but this is different. Oh, this is bigger than Hashem? No, but it's just not happening. So why are you crying? As if Hashem doesn't know that you're crying. Why is all of a sudden going to the synagogue something you don't feel like doing? Why is all of a sudden the tzedakah account has become your stock portfolio because you don't feel like donating anymore? Why is all of a sudden, when it comes to the holidays, it's become a burden? Just because you didn't have another baby? Just because you couldn't find a shidduch for your daughter or your son? Just because of this and just because of that, your emunah went into the garbage because Hashem does not dance to your tune? What happened to you? Rabotai Karim, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Am Yisrael that salvation is coming. To such an extent, you're not going to see this enemy ever again. This is all part of the test. Hashem is going to fight the war for you. You don't even have to worry about having swords. But they're still crying. They're still crying, Rabotai. Later on in the parasha, we see that Am Yisrael sees the hand of Hashem and what He did to the Egyptians. And they fear Him and they believe in Him and in Moshe. But then, after they sing to Him, and they even say that the genius of Hashem is used to punish the enemy, meaning that He punishes the enemy specifically for specific things and not just general destruction. Everything is done with wisdom, as the Torah begins with the word Bereshit. Bereshit also means with wisdom. They celebrate, they dance, they sing. But then they get to the water, the bitter waters. They scream out to Hashem again. They scream out to Moshe. Moshe cries out to Hashem, and Hashem simply shows him, here, take this little tree. You see that tree? There's no reason that tree should be anything more than a tree. If you have a whole lake or some body of water full of bitter water, and you throw a tree into it, guess what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing will happen. But today something else will happen. You take that little tree, you throw it into the water, the entire body of water will turn into sweet, delicious water unlike anything you've ever tasted. How? Hashem runs the world. Open miracle in front of your eyes, in front of millions of people. But this is also to teach you. ויאמר אם שמוע תשמע לכל אדוני אלוהיך והישר בעיניו תעשה ועזרת למצוותיו ושמרת כל חוקיו כל המחלה אשר שמתי במצרים לא אשים עליך כי אני אדוני רופאך. Hashem says, if you hearken diligently to the voice of Hashem your God and do what is just in His eyes, give ear to His commandments and observe all His decrees, then any of the diseases that I placed in Egypt I will not bring upon you, for I am Hashem, your healer. Here we have the blessing of refuah, something you're supposed to do every time before you consume a vitamin or some type of medicine, or before you go to a doctor. It's a blessing. We made posters of this a few years ago and we gave countless copies of them out. Something that every person, before they take a medicine, they need to realize this is just a piece of chalk or some liquid. This is just a human being with 2 legs and 2 arms. There's really no reason of why this person should be able to heal me. Unless Hashem decides He will. Unless Hashem decides this chalk will turn into something that will cure me, that will help me. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm the healer. Give me a reason. By following my Torah, I can even make this bitter water into something sweet. So you would think that, okay, so now that we saw the miracles, and thereby again more miracles of the ocean split into 12, just to magnify and glorify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. And we sang a Kadosh Baruch Hu's glory in His name, and we said all types of amazing things in the song of Moshe. We got to this body of water and we slipped up a little bit, but quickly you gave us sweet, delicious water, and you even gave us an extra message to learn from it, that hey, this water is to remind you that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can cure every ailment. And He will if you simply give Him a reason. But shortly thereafter, we got hungry. We ran out of matzah. We started crying to Moshe. What'd you bring us out of Egypt, just so you could starve us? If only we had died by the hand of Hashem in the land of Egypt, as we sat by a pot of meat when we ate bread to satiety. They started pretending as if they had a good, healthy diet in Egypt. The hunger stupefied them even further. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, how do you have the audacity to complain to me? What am I, Bichlal? What am I? I'm nothing. Aaron is nothing. V'anachnu ma? Your complaints are against Hashem. How can you complain about Hashem? Oh, I don't have enough money. Did you have money last month? Yes. Did you have money the month before that? Yes. Guess what? Even if you didn't say yes, I'll tell you you had enough. How do I know you're still alive? If you didn't have enough last month or the month before, or for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years you're alive, guess what? We wouldn't be here talking. Yeah, but it came to some deal that was last minute and somebody lent me money and I found it. And where do you think that happened? Who do you think decided that all of this would happen? That somebody would lend you money, or that you would find money, or the last minute deal. How do you think all of that happened? Why did you forget Hashem? Oh, but I need it. Okay, did you need this yesterday? No. Okay, so you didn't get it yesterday. Today you need it. Today Crying about it? Why are you crying about it? Did crying ever solve your problems? Why are you questioning Hashem? Pray to Hashem, cry to Hashem to help you, no problem. But crying about Hashem, complaining about Hashem, how do you have the audacity to do that? Moshe Rabbeinu was asking the same exact question to Am Yisrael. What are you complaining about? You complaining about Hashem? No, it's you. What me? Who am I? I'm nothing. But Rabbi, I have a lot of problems. Okay, and how exactly do you think I'm going to solve them for you? Pray to Hashem. I can pray until I'm blue in the face, but if it's not the will of Hashem, it's not going to happen. And guess what? In order for it to happen, my prayer may not be enough because you have to change. You have to get the message. You have to take something on to give the prayer that I will do, or that the Avrichim will do, or that all of us will do, give it some fuel. But if you didn't get the message, then why should Hashem change the decree? The whole point of the sickness, the whole point of the poverty, the whole point of the loneliness was so you get closer to Hashem. What do you think Hashem gets a kick out of seeing you cry? You think Hashem enjoys your suffering and your pain? When you cry, He cries for you, but not for the same reason. You're crying because you think you're alone. He's crying because you think you're alone when He's with you. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Am Yisrael, you're crying to me. What are you crying to me? Don't you get the message? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to see if you believe in Him. Do you really think He made all of those miracles that brought you all the way here just to starve you? Because ultimately the main message that you will get and that will answer all of this, Vayadatem ki ani Adonai Elohechem, you will know that I am Hashem your God. Knowledge of God. In so many words, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Am Yisrael, all of this is an Amunah test. Not an Amunah test when the miracles are happening, but an Amunah test where you don't see the miracles of yesterday today. Now, Rabotai Yekarim, to know that Hashem is your creator is not so difficult. To remember it and live it when you're going through a test of emunah requires preparation. This is why the Rambam writes in Ilchot Yesodei Torah, the fundamental laws of the Torah, the first halacha. You open a Rambam, first thing you're going to see. Yesod HaYesodot ve'amud HaChochmot. לדע שיש שם מצוי ראשון והוא ממציא כל נמצא וכל הנמצאים משמיים וארץ ומה שביניהם לא נמצאו אלא מאמיתת הימצאו. The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brought all existence into being. All the entities in the heavens, the earth, and what is between them came into existence only from the truth of His being. In so many words, a person must know that everything before him, everything in his life, everything after him, everything is all through the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing is independent of Hashem. Nothing. Your success and salvation, your suffering and agony, your ideas to do something that ends up turning into great success, that success came from Hashem. The idea that was a great idea but failed, that failure is from Hashem. That wife or husband you found, somehow, some way, someone introduced you out of nowhere, love of your life, that's from Hashem. The child that came to the world miraculously when everyone told you it's impossible to have any kids, that's from Hashem. Trying to have a child with tears coming out of your eyes like fountains, with one miscarriage and one miss this and one nightmare after another, that's from Hashem. All of the trials and tribulations of life, all of the joys and happiness, all are by the hand of Hashem. This is the foundation of the Torah. This is the first thing that we must all know. Unfortunately, a study that was done about 10 years ago by PEW Research said that nearly 50% of modern Orthodox Jews do not believe in Hashgacha Pratit, in divine providence. In so many words, that first foundational halacha of the Torah is not part of their obligations, according to them. It explains why when times are rough, they become even less religious. It explains why when times are rough, they start questioning Hashem instead of themselves. It explains why when they hear something that obligates them in the Torah, they reject it much more than they reject something else that obligates them, like the government or the company they work for, even if the obligation of Hashem is much easier to follow. We have to dig deeper. We have to see what else do our sages teach us. What else does the Torah teach us to get us out of this hole that we're in, of constantly failing the test? Because if we don't pass it, we don't get to our purpose of knowing Hashem. Now, Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest man, says in his opening to the book of Proverbs, Mishlei, the reason of why he wrote Mishlei in the first place is written by him in the first 7 verses. First off, he starts off Mishlei with the letter Mem, which the Chachamim teach that the reason why he started with the letter Mem is because Mem is a numeric value of 40, which is symbolic of the 40 days that Shlomo HaMelech fasted in order to merit the wisdom of the Torah. And Shlomo HaMelech knew the Torah is not just something that you can just simply get just because you read some books or just because your father was a rabbi. It's something you have to acquire. It's something you have to toil for. And Shlomo HaMelech is giving us a little insights of why he wrote this extraordinary book called Mishlei. Mishlei Shlomo ben David Melech Israel, לדעת חוכמה ומוסר, להבין אמרי בינה, לקחת מוסר השכל, צדק ומשפט ומשרים, לתת לפתאים עלמה, לנער דעת ומזימה. ישמע חכם ויוסף לקח ונבון תחבולות יקנה. להבין משל ומליצה, דברי חכמים וחידותם, יראת אדוני ראשית דעת, חוכמה ומוסר אבלים בזו. Here are the first 7 verses of chapter 1 of the book of Proverbs. Perhaps this is going to give us a little bit more insight of some of the wisdom of Shlomo that can help us get out of this constant test we are failing. Shlomo HaMelech says, the Proverbs of Shlomo, son of David, king of Israel. First, Shlomo is telling us, I didn't just fast for 40 days, symbolized by the letter Mem, but also, I want to tell you that to acquire wisdom of Torah, to acquire truth, there are only 3 ways to do so. As the Malbim says, one is through Chokhmah, by getting divine inspiration. As Shlomo HaMelech got HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him unique type of wisdom. This is not something that's given to anyone at any time. But it is certainly one of the ways to get wisdom. As anyone that studies the Shas knows that it's customary to put the inside cover or somewhere in the first few pages of every tractate of Gemara the verse from a Torah that says HaShem gives wisdom. Even though you read those 10 books, whether you understand or remember them is only if Hashem wills it. So Shlomo HaMelech says, the first way of acquiring wisdom is divine inspiration. But don't be so upset that you didn't get my wisdom, because you can still get the wisdom. There's 2 other ways. The second way is through tradition. Transmission from father to son, rabbi to student. Just like Shlomo says, I am Shlomo the king, but I'm also the son of David, who was a great chacham. This in itself obligates every father, or someone that wants to be a father, to learn Torah every single day. Because the time will come where your son or daughter will come to you and ask you questions. And your answer will dictate whether your kids will remain loyal to the Torah or not. If your kid asks you a question, such as, what does Masechet Gittin talk about? What does Masechet Orayot mean? How many tractates are there to the Gemara? And why is it different than the Mishnah? Why do you have so many books? How come I never see you study? Or why do you read so many of these books? Why do we go to synagogue? Why can't we eat anything we want like some of the people that are not Jews? How come that woman is not wearing clothes? Why are those kids driving a car on Shabbat? All of these questions are not going to come when the kid is already smart enough and old enough to make their own adult decisions. They're going to come to you when the kid is 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And if you don't have answers to those questions, and countless others that those kids will literally show you how they're divinely inspired to ask those questions that are particular to you, to test your knowledge, to test your loyalty to Hashem, and you don't know the answers, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling you, it was better off to never give you this child. Why? You're ruining them. I gave you a loan called a child. You were supposed to raise this child with Torah and mitzvot. Why would this kid grow up to be someone that's loyal to me, loyal to my Torah, if his father does not even learn it, does not even study it, does not even know the basics about it? Why would he do it? Why would the kid want to be someone that's committed to the Torah if their father is only concerned about business, money, sports, and all types of other things? And even when he does learn Torah, the kid never sees it. Why? It's always outside of the house. It's always away from the family. And the kid never sees anything relating to the Torah, other than once in a while the father takes him to shul, making the think that the only thing you need to do to be Jewish is just go to synagogue. The time will come and your kid will ask you those questions. And the right answer is something that you're either going to know or you're not. But the value and the outcome of that answer will be much more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Because every kid wants to be like their parents. But if your kid wants to be something that's not like you, it's usually because you did something to discourage them. Shlomo HaMelech says the second way to acquire Torah is from your teachers. My father was my teacher. Some people have their rabbi as their teacher. Most people do. But guess what? As great as the rabbi that you is, he may not have as much influence as one bad father. Because the rabbi may be great. The rabbi may get that kid inspired to start protecting their BEIT, to start keeping Shabbat, to start dedicating their life to Torah. But 1 minute and just a few words from a bad father can ruin all of it. When a father says, I don't like your rabbi, all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of being committed to that rabbi's teachings can be spoiled in a moment, because no kid wants to make their father unhappy. And needless to say, the same thing with the mother. So obviously, if the father was able, both with knowledge and time, he would be able to be the rabbi too. But most fathers can't do it, or don't have the ability to do it, or don't have the time to do it, or all of the above. The least they can do is support the rabbi that's teaching their kid how to get to Gan Eden. But sometimes they punish themselves. And instead of encouraging their kid to keep going on the right path, what do? They ruin it. And then they're surprised when their kid all of a sudden doesn't wear a kippah anymore. All of a sudden, he's playing video games instead of reading his Chumash or his Gemara. Oh, you're not interested in that stuff anymore? You don't watch that rabbi anymore? Nah, I'm not interested. Oh, well, okay. And before you know it, he brought you some non-Jew that he wants to marry. Before you know it, he doesn't want to be a Jew himself. And then the father wants to rip his hair out. I don't know what happened to my kid. You know what happened? You murdered him. With just a few words. Just a few words. Shlomo HaMelech tells us in the first statement, as great as I am, being a king, David HaMelech was my father. David HaMelech was my father. He taught me Torah. Way number 3, says the Malbim, is through experience. Shlomo HaMelech was a king that was surrounded by scholars his whole life. And part of one's wisdom can be acquired through experience. Why is it only part and not all of it? Because being street smart is not enough unless you know how to use whatever you learned in the streets, whatever you learned in business, whatever you learned, wherever you learned it, to apply it to the Torah, to apply it to life in the right way. And then Shlomo HaMelech tells us, in order to make known words of wisdom and discipline, to make words of understanding discernible, to accept wise discipline, righteousness, justice, and fairness, to provide simpletons with cleverness, a youth with knowledge and design, that a wise one may hear and increase his learning, and a discerning one may acquire strategies, to understand parable and epigram, the words of the wise and their enigmas. The fear of HaShem is the beginning of knowledge. Foolish ones scorn wisdom and discipline. Of course, we can analyze each and every single word that Shlomo Melech is telling us and be here until next year. But to give us a little bit of food for thought, we see that Shlomo Melech is choosing his words very carefully. Every word became part of the Torah because it was all divinely inspired. Rabbeinu Bachya says that in the name of the sages, it teaches the reason why the Torah is taught in certain ways, where Shlomo is telling us that the prophets use parables as a device to make something that's difficult simpler to understand. Where someone that, for example, needs to know something, but they may not have the tools to know it if you simply explain it to them in the words of the Torah, you have to explain it to them through a parable. For example, if someone lost a precious stone in the dark, he knew that it was there, but he couldn't see it. By lighting a small wick for just a second, he's now able to find this jewel. And therefore, a worthless little piece of cotton became extremely valuable because it enabled him to find his valuable gem. Such is the usage of parables in the Torah. Initially you think, why is it talking in this way? Why can't I just know yes, no, tell me good, tell me true, tell me... You may not appreciate the value of this little piece of cotton until you find the gem. Until you know how to use this parable in order to understand the Torah. Shlomo Melech tells us to know chokhmah, to make words of wisdom and Mussar, to make them understandable to the point where you could actually use them in your day-to-day life. I needed to use these parables. And all of these words are in order to teach you three major things: wisdom, Mussar, and Torah. That's the three things that Shlomo Melech divides the book of Proverbs into: Mussar, Chokhmah, and wisdom, and Torah. Now, the ultimate goal is to get you to the Torah. But what are you going to do with a Torah that you don't know how to treat? And that's why Shlomo Melech, you'll see in the Proverbs multiple times, he compares the Torah to a loyal wife, and heresy to an adulterous woman. Now, it may be hard for a person to understand the value of Torah when we say that without Torah, you're less than a monkey. In fact, 1,000 years ago, the Chovot HaLevavot wrote just that. One of the great sages that wrote one of the most fundamental Mussar books in history. in his Chovot HaLevavot, in the 4th chapter called Serving God. He says, once a person does not accept the Torah, he will not accept the duties called for by the intellect. And when he does not accept what the intellect obligates him to do, even though he understands what it says, what he's supposed to do, but he doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to accept it. You tell him that he has to not drive on Shabbat. You tell him that he has to be worried about being honest in business. Tell him about Gehenom, Kafakela, punishment, losses. Tell him about all these things. He understands, but doesn't accept it. Doesn't accept that God will punish you. Doesn't accept that God cares if you drive on Shabbat. Doesn't accept all of these things that the sages told us. The Torah itself told us. Doesn't accept it. Once he does not accept the Torah, he will not accept the duties. And therefore he loses the defining trait of a human being. That's a living and speaking being. A beast understands the way of his own good better than he does at that point then. As the Torah says by the prophet Yeshayahu, chapter 1, verse 3, Yada shor koneu v'chamor evus ba'alav. Israel lo yada ami lo yitbonen. Israel lo yada ami lo yitbonen. An ox knows its owner, and a donkey his master's stall. But Israel does not know. My people does not give thought. And therefore, the Chovot HaLevavot, Rabbeinu Bachye says, this person's fate will be like the fate of those of whom David HaMelech said in chapter 37, verse 20 of Tehillim, for the wicked will perish, and God's enemies will be consumed like the glory of the pastures. They will be consumed in smoke. In so many words, him not accepting the Torah, not accepting the words of the sages, assured him a bitter, painful eternity and life. Shlomo HaMelech tells us here that if a person is told the Torah is beautiful, the Torah is wonderful, he may or may not agree, only based on whether he learned it. But if a person is told, you're obligated to listen to the Torah, this is what it says, you have to listen. And Torah being the written and the oral Torah. Person will say, listen, I don't agree with you. Shlomo HaMelech says, you're not understanding. The Torah is like a loyal wife. A heretic that rejects it is like an adulterous woman. Do you understand now? One of my Talmidim came to me and told me he's in a business that he has all types of different customers reaching out to him, and a prospective customer reached out to him, and he clicked on the website that's, usually the customers have or people have in their signature to go to their website. And to his surprise, he realized that this prospective customer, that's no longer a prospective customer because he doesn't want to deal with them, Baruch HaShem, but this prospective customer is a prostitute, an escort. And he says, Rabbi, I learned some Mussar from this. This customer is listing all types of services for $10,000 a weekend, $5,000 for this, $20,000 for that. And I realized, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me a righteous woman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me a woman that brought children to the world, that takes care of them, that takes care of me. that's with me through thick and thin, without charging me $10,000 for some weekend. But sometimes I forget to give her the respect she deserves. Sometimes I forget to buy her flowers for Shabbat. Sometimes I forget for 6 months at a time. And sometimes, you know what? I don't even treat her like she's my wife. Sometimes I treat her like she's an enemy. People are paying millions of dollars to go to all of these filthy pigs. They use their body like it's some type of commerce. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to me for free. He gave me something much better. Shlomo HaMelech says, if you understand what the Torah is, you may not need the parable to tell you the Torah is like a good woman and the heretic is like the adulterous escort. But sometimes you'll need to be reminded. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends you even deeper messages to your life, to experience. Now, Chokhmah, this wisdom that Shlomo HaMelech is trying to give us access to, along with the Mussar, Rabbeinu Yonah says that Chokhmah is knowing the way of the righteous people, the path to truth and justice. Whereas Mussar is to know how to reject the acts of the wicked people. Even if it looks delicious, even if it looks attractive, even if it looks profitable, when we know it's the actions of the wicked people, we're able to reject it because we know the damage that will come out of this. And therefore, it's constantly mentioned together, Chokhmah and Mussar, because not enough to just know what the loyal wife is like. It's also the Mussar that you need to know how damaging the prostitute is, the adultery is, the filth is. And the Malbim says that while Chokhmah is referring to the ability of choosing correctly between the opposite of cruelty and compassion, arrogance and humility, the correct choice is called Chokhmah. Because it'll show you how to choose, when to use what. Meaning that having wisdom is a good thing. But in order to be wise, you have to be humble. But at the same token, having humility is not always wise. Because if you're fighting with a wicked person, a little bit of arrogance is wise to have. So therefore, Chokhmah allows a person to choose how, when, and how much to use each trait. Because a person cannot rely on their own instincts to make the proper choices. Because the personal desires will always interfere. And therefore, true Chokhmah is taught in the written and the oral Torah. Because a person cannot get to such a level through his own intellect or experience by itself. Because the only way, as Shlomo HaMelech is telling us, to get to this is through learning the Torah from the sages. Now, Shlomo is telling us we need to accept discipline, righteousness, justice, fairness, know when to use judgment, mercy, how to apply Mussar that you've learned, because this will help you even if you're currently a simpleton. What's a simpleton? Somebody who hasn't learned Torah. In fact, even if you are a clever person, it'll also help you know how to use that cleverness. It will increase whatever status you currently are at. It will allow you to know the difference between Yirat HaOnesh and Yirat HaRomemut, the fear of punishment and the recognition of God's awesomeness. Because both are technically beyond human comprehension, especially the latter. Why do I need to know these two? Because that's what's required in order to accept the Torah at face value, which you will need in order to acquire emunah. A chacham is someone that has acquired knowledge, whereas an arum, a clever person, is someone that's shrewd and persuasive, but if he does not have Torah, he's very dangerous. If he does have Torah, he could be a Talmid Chacham. A simpleton, a petty, on the other hand, is neither. Shlomo HaMelech says that this book, called Mishlei, if you study it, not just read it like a newspaper or a storybook, if you study it, it'll help you turn yourself from a simpleton into someone that has chokhmah and can even attain cleverness. But a person needs to know that in order for all of this to work, you have to know why he wrote it. He says he wrote it in such a way so you'll be able to ultimately understand the parables and the epigrams and the words of the Chachamim taught elsewhere. Taught in the written Torah, taught by the prophets, taught in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, in the Shulchan Aruch, in Sifrei Hasidut, in Sifrei Mussar. The point of all of it is so you could start learning how to learn. And not just look at things like the idol worshippers look at, where you're trying to simply interpret things according to your own intellect. First, he's telling you, I'm Shlomo. I've acquired wisdom in all three ways: divine inspiration, experience, and my father, David HaMelech. That the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, Halacha was always like David HaMelech. Not because he was king, but rather because he was the biggest Talmid Chacham. Halacha was like him. He naturally thought of the truth. Shlomo HaMelech says, first things first, know that I'm smarter than you. As smart as you are, know I'm smarter than you. I know more than you. You want to learn from me? Now that you realize I'm that smart, treat all of the Chachamim, all of the sages the same way. Whether it's the Chachamim of your generation, the Gdolei Ador, those that are teaching Torah with truth in Yirat Shamayim, or it's the Achronim, Rishonim, the Amoraim, the Tanaim, and the Gemara, and the Mishnah, treat all of them in the same way, where automatically you're going in there with your head down, submitting to the fact that whatever they're saying, they're right, you're wrong. They know, you don't. Once you go that way, you become a vessel to accept the wisdom, to accept the Mussar, to be able to become something in someone. But the moment you come into a bet midrash with a chip on your shoulder, the moment you come into a rabbi with the belief that you know more than he does, or you're on the same level as he does, automatically you've already decided the outcome of this conversation. It will be a failure. It will be a failure. So Shlomo HaMelech is telling us, use this as the tool to constantly remind you, you don't know as much as you think you do. And in fact, those that have dedicated their life to Torah, for sure, know a lot more than you do. Those that are written in the books certainly understand and know all the different things that you can come up with. Why is this more important? Because in order to understand what's written in the Torah, whether it's the Gemara or the Shulchan Aruch or everything else, you have to understand there's more to every statement than simply the words that you see. There are multiple statements. There are multiple messages. Where on one end, it's a mashal. It's a lesson that the proverb or the metaphor is trying to teach you. But on another end, it's a melitza. A melitza is that the metaphor itself has a lesson that's completely separate from the deeper intent. Where in the book of Kings, for example, chapter 2, verse number 16, Shlomo HaMelech says that Chokhmah will protect a person from a strange woman. So the metaphor is referring to the dangers of heresy. Because we said before, bad women are heresy. Good woman, Torah. But the Melitza is teaching you that you also have to beware of immoral women. Literally what the verse is saying to you. And therefore you can learn multiple messages from the same thing. There are constantly people that see a couple of minutes of, let's just say, the Gehenom film. They see the horrible information that's on the screen, showing them what the sages are saying about what happens of life after death if a person is wicked. And immediately they start coming up with all types of questions. They start looking for sources that reject it, that deny it. What do you think about this? What did he say? What did that say? But this one says no, but this one says now. Habibi, watch the whole film. There are over 170 sources. There were only a fraction of all the sources available, but certainly you can assume and rely on the fact that whatever thought or idea you are just so happen to find right now in 5-10 minutes was already considered by the one that put it together, that has taught it for the last decade, and needless to say, the 170 sources of extraordinary sages that made those statements. They took what you're going to find somehow, somewhere, in 5 minutes into consideration. And they still made those statements. Do you know why? Because they had the full picture. Whereas you're trying to find little bits and pieces and crumbs somewhere just to find the point that you already have. You see, Rabotai Karim, when a person learns how to use wisdom through learning Mussar, they know how to learn Torah properly. Now, why do I need all of this? I thought the problem was emunah. And therefore, says Shlomo HaMelech, the first lesson after giving you the introduction of 7 verses of why I even wrote the book of Proverbs, the first lesson I want to teach you, Yirat Adonai Reshit Dat. The fear of Hashem is the beginning of knowledge. You want to have knowledge of God, which means you know that God is with you at all times. You have emunah in Hashem. You have bitachon in Hashem. 2 completely separate things. Emunah, understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu monitors everything, including your life. Bitachon, knowing that everything He does is always the best choice out of all choices available, including the horrible things that happen in life. When you don't have bitachon and bad things happen, you question God. Why did He do this? Why did He deserve to die? Why did He lose money? Why am I alone? Why this? Why that? Shlomo HaMelech is telling us, you, my dear son, are lacking in bitachon in Hashem. You think you know how to run the world better than Him. You think that the person that died should have lived, and the person that lost should have profited. And whatever other circumstance that you determine is bad is for sure as you think. You think you know better than God. Well, guess what? You don't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows much better than you, because He knows the whole picture. That's why I heard an extraordinary idea, chidush, on one of the famous Gemarot that's mentioned in Masechet Chayga by Rav Meir Eliyahu Shichyeh, was the famous story of the 4 Chachamim that went up to the Pardes. In essence, they elevated their neshama out of their body experience, and they saw something called Pardes. One died, one went crazy, one became a heretic, and one became better for it. The one that became better for it, Rabbi Akiva. The one that became a heretic, Elisha Acher. But the Gemara words it specifically and says that Rabbi Akiva went there complete and came out complete. Why do I need to know that he went there complete and came back complete? In order to teach us. If you arrive at the test with complete emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, without any safek, without any doubts, no matter what test is in front of you, the outcome you'll be complete. The outcome you'll be good. But if you go to the test and there's any questions in your emunah, any questions in your bitachon, you're not so sure about whether you or Hashem know how to run the world better, you're not so sure of who, what, when, and how, and maybe something could have been better, and perhaps maybe Hashem made a mistake, or perhaps maybe you know better. If you arrive at a test, whether it's the October 7th, or the Holocaust, or your own personal tragedy, or difficulty, or somebody else's personal tragedy, or difficulty, you arrive at that test incomplete, you'll be damaged as a result. Meaning, you'll get worse over time. Just like Elisha Achel. He already had problems where the Chachamim say used to read newspapers of the heretics and also listen to music of the Gentiles. That was enough to put damage on his neshama at the moment that he was tested with something unknown. It was already too much for him to handle. Even though he was wise enough and extraordinary enough in his neshama to go up to the Pardes in the first place. That did not mean that he's going to succeed as a result. Shlomo HaMelech is telling us, Rabotai Yekarim, Yirat Adonai Reshit Da'at. You want to know God? It all starts with fear of the Almighty. What's fear of the Almighty? The Gemara in Masechet Pesachim brings Rabbi Akiva to show his extraordinary wisdom, where one of the Chachamim taught his students how every single word in the Torah is there for a specific purpose, and in fact, to such an extent that even words that you would think have no purpose, have a purpose and have a teaching in them. One of the words that does not have a perfect translation in English is it. Some will say, yeah, it means the, but not always. Sometimes it means something else. So, Shimon Asmoni, and some say it was Nehemiah Asmoni, would teach that every time the word et is mentioned in the Torah, Gemara Masechet Pesachim, page 22b, that it's to teach you an additional lesson. Like when it says, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, that honor your mother and your father and your mother. The et is also to revere your older brother. And every time it mentions there. But then he got to a point where it says, Et Hashem Elokecha tira. You shall revere et Hashem your God. He's like, well, what else is greater than Hashem? Comes Rabbi Akiva, who for 22 years learned from Nachum Ish Gamzu. Every year he would learn everything there is to know about Aleph. Then the second year, everything there is to know about the letter Bet. Then the third year, everything there is to know about the letter Gimel. 22 years, he learns everything there is to know about the entire alphabet. 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Comes Rabbi Akiva and says, Et Hashem Tira also means fear Hashem by listening to his Chachamim, listening to the sages. Listening to the sages. Rabotai Yekarim, the Gemara says in Masechet Pesachim, page 38, that when the Chachamim said something, people listened. So much so that Shmuel said that the certain pots should not be used for Pesach, even though biblically it's not a problem. But rabbinically, they didn't want them to use it. And he said to all of the people that sold pots, if you increase the prices now, causing people to buy new pots with very expensive prices, I'm going to make it allowed. Meaning, in so many words, it's allowed, but we don't need it to be. Why? There's ways around it. But if you make this, following this mitzvah, expensive and torture people as a result, I'll change the law just for you. So much so that the Chachamim had complete leadership over the people, including their businesses. People listened to everything they said. Another example is when it comes to making bread. You weren't allowed to eat bread that was made together with meat fat, or bread that was made together with dairy. Even if it was kosher dairy, even if it was kosher meat. Not allowed. Why? Because even though it's technically kosher, somebody can make a mistake and take the bread, forget that it's a dairy bread, and eat it together with some meat. Or vice versa, eat the meat bread with some cheese. So they forbid this. And people listened, and they didn't make this type of bread. Meaning these holy sages, Rabotai, didn't just make rules for their own benefits. They were protecting the people. And therefore comes Rabbi Akiva and says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in the Torah, fear Hashem, et Hashem, what he's telling you, if you want to fear Hashem, you also have to take into consideration that the words of the sages, the words of the Chachamim, are the words of Hashem. And that's why, when Shlomo HaMelech says, Yirat Adonai, Reshit Dat, the fear of Hashem is the beginning of knowledge, he's not just talking about the fear of Hashem, just be afraid of Hashem, and that's it. He's talking about everything that came from Hashem. The written Torah and the oral Torah. How do we know? Because he continues and he says, the foolish ones scorn wisdom and discipline. What wisdom and discipline? The Torah doesn't teach us the details that people can go against. When you say the Ten Commandments say such and such, people don't have a problem with the Ten Commandments say. When you tell people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, people don't have a problem with it. When do they start having a problem? When it comes to the clarification and interpretation of the sages. When they tell you what Hashem meant in these words. When they clarify the wisdom. When they clarify the Mussar that's within these words, that's when people reject. So Shlomo HaMelech says, the fear of Hashem begins with knowledge. He's talking about that Chokhmah must be predicated on the fear of the Creator, which generates a desire to be engrossed in the wisdom of the Torah. But this Torah is not just the written book of 5 books of Moses. This Torah is referring to also the words of the holy sages, where if one would ignore the words of the sages, he would not know anything about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what he wants. And therefore, Rabotai, we go back to the parasha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made miracle upon miracle for us. The plagues, the destruction of idolatry, the destruction of entire enemy nation, empowered us, enriched us. But yet, we questioned Hashem. We cried about Hashem. After we got to Yam Suf, we cried to Hashem. We cried to Moshe. Moshe didn't cry. Why? Because Moshe heard what Hashem said. Hashem said, this is the plan. I'm going to bring Paro. He's going to pressure you. He's going to look like he's going to win again. But the whole point is so I can punish him. And my name is glorified even in the eyes of the Goyim. Needless to say, the Jews. That's the plan. I'm with you. I'm here to bring you the salvation. But the ultimate purpose of the salvation has to be in line with the ultimate purpose of the world, which is to sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. And therefore the disaster, the war, has to happen. If you know me, you won't be afraid. You won't cry. You won't be concerned, because you know this is all part of the same plan, from the same hand, from the same creator. The same one that brought you the salvation before is the same one that's going to bring you the one tomorrow. And if you find yourself crying, that's because you lack in the knowledge of God. And if you say, no, but I know who God is. I learned about him. I even watched your shiur, Rabbi. Then perhaps it's not just knowledge, but it's also application. Because when Am Yisrael saw the hand of Hashem after he destroyed the enemy, it says, "Vayar Yisrael et hayad hagdola asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim, vayiru ha'am et Adonai vayaminu ba'Adonai b'Moshe avdo." Israel saw the great hand that Hashem inflicted upon Egypt, and the people revered Hashem, and they had faith in Hashem and in Moshe his servant. They saw the hand of Hashem, and automatically that brought them fear of Hashem. And then, after they had fear of Hashem, they had emunah in Hashem and his servant. So here we see there are two ways to acquire emunah in Hashem. Either you wait for the salvation to come and suffer the whole way. In so many words, tragedy after tragedy, horror after horror, problem after problem, sleepless night after sleepless night, misery after misery, stress after stress. And ultimately, Hashem will bring the salvation. Ultimately, whether you want to or not, you'll see that all of it was for your benefit. Even if by the time you see it, it's already after you ended your life in this world. You will ultimately say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you for everything you did. Thank you for that problem. Thank you for that test. Thank you for that difficulty. Thank you. Everything you did was the best possible choice out of all of the choices available to me. So one can do that. Just like Am Yisrael here did it. They were afraid, they were crying, they were miserable. But ultimately they saw the great hand of Hashem, they feared him, and then they believed in him. So in one way, you can do the same thing. But it's not a healthy way to do it. Why? Because you see, you have to keep doing it. When we got to the bitter waters, again they cried. Again they saw the salvation. They got to the point they needed food. Again they cried. They got the man. They got the salvation. So they stopped crying. But it just kept happening again and again and again. Why? Because they didn't do the prerequisite, which was the other way to acquire fear of Hashem and thereby emunah in Hashem. Don't wait for the salvation to come in order to believe in Hashem. Just believe in Him by learning His Torah, by applying it to your life, by perfecting your character and your observation of the mitzvot. In so many words, when the sages say something, do it. If your rabbi tells you something, do it. Somebody else tells you something, don't do it until you ask your rabbi. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought Am Yisrael Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not on the level to have Moshe Rabbeinu, but everyone has somebody that they're learning from. They see at shul, he's the rabbi. You learn from his shulim, you learn from that shul. Make yourself a rabbi. Not rabbis, not 500 people, not 20 people, not even 2. You have a rabbi, he tells you to do something, he said it in a shul, do it. Like it, don't like it, doesn't make a difference. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, there are 2 ways that you can get to the knowledge of God, to the fear of God. You can go through the experience and the difficulty until you get the salvation, or you can just simply do what Chachamim have been telling us to do for thousands of years. And by default, you'll end up acquiring fear of the Almighty and His sages, which will ultimately translate into having emunah in Hashem. And when you have emunah in Hashem, there's no difficulty that's too big for you. Because you're just like Rabbi Akiva. You're going into the test with complete emunah in Hashem. Despite the difficulty of the test, the outcome is you'll be complete and even better for it. BeEzrat Hashem, this explains why Chizkiyahu did what he did. As the Chazon Ish tells us, Chizkiyahu had the book of cures, but he saw that this book of cures disconnected people from all of what we just said tonight. Instead of listening to the Chachamim and doing tshuva and getting closer to Hashem and fearing Hashem and having emunah in Hashem, they just wanted the end product. They just wanted the salvation. Chizkiyahu says, you may look at it as a salvation because you got the cure, but in reality, that sickness itself, that was the medicine. That was supposed to be the medicine. That you use that sickness as a message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do tshuva, to get closer to Hashem, to fix yourself. Now that you're ruining that medicine, now we have to ruin this whole thing that we got from Shlomo HaMelech because you're misusing it. Hashem gave you money so you could do more mitzvot with it. Invest more in Torah. Spend less time working. Instead of doing that, you're using it for the wrong reason, to the point where you're not even able to pray because you're so worried about money. You're not even able to learn Torah because you're so worried about making more. You've turned the blessing into a curse. Don't be surprised if you lose all of it, because Chizkiyahu took away the book of the cures in order to help Am Yisrael. And if Hashem has mercy on you, you'll get the message before you lose everything. Rabotai Yekarim, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is always the best. That's what Rabbi Akiva taught us at the end of the Gemara in Masechet Brachot. Everything that the Merciful One does is always the best possible choice out of all choices available to us. To learn it, we can suffer until we see, or we can learn and apply and enjoy the journey, being close to HaShem, holding His hand the whole way there. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of us to overcome the tests of emunah by arriving to it prepared with complete emunah even before the tests arrived. Anyone that wants to share these lectures and get the mitzvah, please share them as soon as possible so Am Yisrael can do tshuva, so we could all do tshuva, and we could all get the merits of helping others do tshuva. You want to help us publicize these lectures, do more USBs, more books, more videos, more of the things that we're doing. Please donate on the website, BeEzrat or one of the other many options that we have, whether it's the other websites, bhtorah.org or Tikkun BEIT, or the many other ways that anyone that wants to donate will find a way to do so. Thank you again for learning with me. May Hashem bless all of us with bracha and atzlacha. And as the Yakut Yosef says in the halacha of the Kaddish, that we say the Kaddish in such a way that we bless all of Am Yisrael along with ourselves. Because one that wants to have his blessings fulfilled asks for the blessings for all of Am Yisrael as well as himself. That way we could all be blessed. May we all get blessed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu with bracha, atzlacha, parnasa b'shefa, refuat nefesh, and refuat guf. Kol tu, bracha v'atzlacha.